taking a look at a feud that actually a lot of people believe there's some heat to it, but this is almost a creator feud debunked, if you will. This is a look at some of the behind the scenes between the epic feud of Kevin Smith and Brian Michael Bendis. Or is it? Hey everybody, this is Perch. This is a bit of kind of inside baseball, and it may not interest a lot of people. It's one of those cases where when you talk about creator feuds, and I have done a couple, and I'm going to continue to do them, although they're always slightly dodgy because I want to say going in, I never have all the information up front. When I did the video on Rucka and Cho, I got a number of people from a number of different fronts writing in, telling me, "Hey, you forgot about this part. Hey, there was this part. Hey, this part nobody knew, but it was actually important. Hey, the feud actually had more to do with it, and it was this and this and this." And there was just it was actually annoying to the point that I wish I hadn't done the video, because it was like, well, I gave a tease of kind of some of what was going on with that story, but there was a lot more to it. And maybe someday I come back and revisit that, or maybe not. But this is a good feud to kind of go into because it's one where it was a big news at the time in the 2000s, I think early 2000s, and then it kind of disappeared for a bit of time, and people say, "Oh, it was no big deal," and then recently in the last year, it's come up more and more. I've heard about it. So this is that Kevin Smith hates Brian Michael Bendis, and vice versa. The two of them just dislike each other immensely. So is it true? Well, first off, hate, probably not. I think that both individuals have said complimentary things about the other in different places. It doesn't feel like this is a true, actual rivalry that's going on, but there is some history here. So the history actually comes down to Daredevil, and to do this, we have to go way, way, way back in time to Marvel Knights and Daredevil #1 by Kevin Smith and Joe Quesada, which was the relaunch back in '98. Now, the late '90s, this is the industry is in deep trouble. Comic books are having some problems, and kind of in the Heroes Reborn type way, Quesada was relaunching a lot of these street level heroes and doing the Marvel Knights series. So Daredevil is one; he's doing the art. Kevin Smith doing the story. And in his first arc, basically Kevin Smith murders off Karen Page by Bullseye. And this was going to be a big moment. It was really going to, drive up the rivalry between Bullseye and Daredevil. Not that they needed more, but just kind of really amp this up. And the series and the whole thing was, of course, very successful for Joe Quesada. It put Daredevil kind of back on the map as being a more important character that he had kind of suffered a bit since Frank Miller left the title, and it was a big deal. So what happens later is Brian Michael Bendis gets his hands on the book. This would be in the early 2000s, and Bendis is going to basically do something with Bullseye. Because of course you're writing Daredevil, why wouldn't you do something with Bullseye? Your Bullseye is kind of forever tied to Daredevil. And but what was going on at the time was that Quesada had apparently promised Kevin Smith that he could write the sequel or the follow-up to his original story that launched Marvel Knights, and that he would be able to more or less kind of tell the next chapter in the kind of the blood feud, the amped up emotional rivalry between these two characters. And so when somehow, somebody or somewhere, Kevin Smith got wind that Bendis was going to do this story. Again, how that happened is probably a good mystery, but Kevin Smith finds out. Kevin Smith reminds Quesada that, hey, you promised I could do that. Whether he was serious or joking, nobody knows, but this ultimately leads to a new Kevin Smith series called The Target. And this was, I think this is 2004, maybe 2003, 2004. And a bunch of things were going to happen. It was going to kind of tie in and connect to the amazing Daredevil movie, which everybody was super looking forward to with Ben Affleck. and it was going to change Bullseye's look to resemble Colin Farrell. That kind of goateed, bald, the Bullseye target etched or scarred into the forehead. And this was kind of the purpose of this. So issue 1 comes out of the target, and then nothing. Issue 2 proceeds to not come out. And even though some promises had been made over the years that no, it's really coming, I promise. Kevin Smith saying, "Hey, I'm going to do it. It's still coming. I haven't forgotten about it." Instead of doing, the original comic, which the target number 1 was done by Glenn Fabry, the new one will be done by Adam Kubert, and it's coming. So he, in fact, years later, I think several years after the first issue was penned, Smith said no, he's working on the script for issue 2, and that it would be any day now. It would be coming, but of course it did not. But regardless of all that, it did force Bendis to change his storyline a little bit, and instead of having Bullseye show up, it was Elektra instead, and Bendis would go on and kind of do different things for a while. And so he several years went by, and eventually Bendis just the release something happened, and Bendis was able to use Bullseye around like a bit later, and he was finally able to get to it. But rumors persisted that this created a rift between both individuals. That Kevin Smith disliked Bendis because Bendis ultimately got a write the character anyway, and Bendis was angry that he had to change his story last minute for Kevin Smith using the character, but then he didn't use the character, and so all this stuff went on. So what's the truth in all this? Well, the truth is kind of what I said. Those are kind of the facts of the story, if you will, and this is what ultimately went down. What is probably not true or got sensationalized is if the two legitimately hated each other, or there was some real anger between them. That's probably long gone now. I think there's probably some teasing that go on, I'm sure, between when's the target ever going to come out. Kevin Smith seems to get teased about that on an infrequent basis, all the time. And so I think that still goes on, but I don't sense any real heat from this. I think Bendis, like I said, there's been nice, at least cordial statements said back and forth. So this doesn't feel like a big, major rivalry. I think Kevin Smith continues to do things in and around comics. Bendis obviously has moved from Marvel to DC. If anything, I think probably some of the irritation comes in, and here's pure speculation on my part, but I think there's some truth to this. Is that this was one of the first tastes that Bendis got of being told that a character had to be done in a certain way. And in this case, they were tying in Bullseye to the movie, which is kind of a weird, goofy look and something that was backed away from in years, that would come. And I think that probably, as a writer, was annoying, this idea you have to tie into a movie, and especially a movie that didn't do well then. And on top of that, I think Bendis would go on to have more irritations with the Marvel movie division when he was part of that steering committee, that short-lived, ill-fated steering committee that was supposed to advise Kevin Feige on how to make Marvel movies that also didn't go anywhere. So I think there's probably some frustration in that camp. Although I don't get the sense that this keeps Bendis up at night or any of this stuff goes around. So there is the origins behind the feud. It's kind of a wacky part of history. The Daredevil at Target number 2 still hasn't come out. Probably will never come out. Let's just say that's not coming anytime soon. I think the novelty at this point, even if they put it out, I think nobody's itching for that comic. And enough has happened with Daredevil and just the series and everything else in general that life has moved on. Mark Waid did his Daredevil run, which changed it completely. I mean, the status quo of Daredevil, he's had his secret identity revealed and then hidden and then kind of revealed again and not. And so, he's been mayor and assistant mayor. He's worked for the Kingpin. Kingpin's mayor in New York. All kinds of stuff has happened. So the Target number 2 would be a very weird comic at this point anyway. And the first one is not beloved in all Marvel history. At the same time, this arch rivalry feud probably doesn't really exist. So for what it's worth, it's a happy ending for a change. But this is an example where I think people get kind of wound up in things and then turns out it's not a big deal. Do you have any questions? Any thoughts? Leave them in the comments below. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Comic Perch. Happy to help. Thanks for listening.